Hello and welcome to Firearm Freedom. This is going to be another First Impressions video. In today's First Impressions video, we are looking at the FN SCAR 16S. And before we get this video started, I want to give a quick shout out to today's video sponsor, which is Locks & Company. It's really cool to have their sponsorship, one, because they are a local Pennsylvania-based company, which is always awesome. And it is a company that sells products that's a little bit different from the regular gun sponsors and other accessory sponsors that you see on the channel. They sell primarily men's grooming products, but they also sell some women's products as well and some awesome merchandise. They have a pomade that I have been using for about a year now, which is War Daddy Wax. That stuff is awesome, holds in the rain, at the range, whatever. It will hold really well for you, and they have a wide variety of other pomades and beard products. They even have natural deodorants, natural body washes, and better yet, I got you guys a discount code, so if you use Firearm Freedom 10 at checkout, that will get you 10% off of your order, and it'll also let Locks & Company know you came to their website off of this ad, and of course that will help the channel out as well, and I greatly appreciate your support. This is the second video on the channel that I have ever done that is on a firearm that is not mine. This is actually a loaner firearm to the channel, and I'll be honest with you guys, I don't know that I ever saw myself in the future of Firearm Freedom hosting a SCAR 16S on the channel, and it's not because I don't like the gun. This is just one of those guns that always kind of seemed like a price point that was not something I was interested in. Now that I'm getting into things like an HKSP5, which is around the same price point, I'm beginning to think about stuff like this more. But it's still going to probably be a little bit before I get a SCAR 16S or a SCAR 17 on the channel. So a good buddy of mine, Paul, shout out to you, man. I seriously appreciate this. He let me borrow this rifle and take a look at it on the channel. So it is most definitely a first impressions. I only put about 120 rounds through it, but I do think it is enough of a round count to at least give you guys what I'm feeling with this rifle the first few trigger pulls at the range. I also think it's interesting to use someone else's rifle because, as you guys can see here, he has this completely outfit with what works for him. And these accessories are maybe not necessarily what I would run on my rifle because I have my own personal preferences. But I think that's awesome for training at the range. I can kind of just get a feel for a rifle in a setup that I may not have necessarily done, so it allows me to just get kind of just a different feel at the range. Now, this is a newer variation of the SCAR 16S, so this one has the non-reciprocating charging handle, which is nice. He has on an EOTech EXPS up top. We got a Vortex Micro 3x magnifier. We have a Steiner laser up here at the top. This is the laser that only has the IR designation and not the visible laser, but it does a really good job. We also have a Vampire Scout light off on the side. This is the Pro Scout light, so it is having the really nice attachment system here so you could hug it real up close to that SCAR top rail. And then we also have an ambidextrous charging handle control here on either side. This is something that I would probably, for myself, if this was my rifle, I'd probably just run one on whatever side and just stick with that. But of course I do see the benefit of having it on both sides. We got a sling QD swivel from Magpul here on the bottom of the rail. And then we have a Troy vert grip. You guys know I do love these stubby aluminum vert grips. I think they're phenomenal. And as far as the trigger, he went ahead and threw in the upgraded Geisley SCAR trigger, and this trigger is just phenomenal. We'll talk about that in a bit when we start talking about how it's shot at the range. We also have this BCM grip here. Now, this grip, I noticed it was getting a little loose at the range, so I took it off and I started to try to tighten it, and I realized, you know, no matter what, we were getting a little bit of that gap there. So I took the grip off and just kind of looked at the fitment, and this is about as good as you're going to get it if you want to go with the BCM grip. Not the end of the world. It's not like you're gonna feel that section there, but it's just an aesthetic thing, so just keep that in mind. Some grips will work for the Scar, some grips just are gonna have a gap or gonna have weird fitment. And then you could also go with a Lingle Industries lower for this guy and put in a lot of standard AR-15 parts, which really is helpful when you're looking at trying to set this rifle up. Still rocking the standard Scar stock, the good old UGG boot here in the back, and I don't have anything really against this stock other than the butt pad, which we'll talk about in a bit. And then we also have a Silencer Co. 3-prong ASR muzzle device up there on the front to void the warranty. How was this thing shooting at the range? What were my first initial impressions for getting shots downrange on the Scar 16S? I was immediately impressed with the recoil impulse. We were not running this suppressed at all. It was just on the standard gas setting up there in the front, and everyone always raved about the recoil impulse being low on the Scar series. And of course, again, being not shooting it, I could never really see whether that was true or not. And at this range day, I seriously was impressed. The recoil impulse was next to nothing. I mean, there was no snap of the recoil. It was incredibly pleasant to shoot, so that was the first plus for the Scar. The one thing that I will say is how the gun recoiled. Although it wasn't like sharp and a lot of recoil, it was kind of this like weird movement here. It almost reminded me of a handgun like an HK USP having that weird like wave movement in the recoil. And I think that might have a little bit to do with it still having this 16-inch barrel out in the front. Maybe not. You do have a shortened rail here and you got a lot of barrel space. So that could be the cause, you know, having a lot of weight towards the back of the rifle with that kind of funky recoil to it. But let me know down in the comment section. Do you guys notice that on your Scars, or is that just me? I don't really know. It was just definitely something that I would have to get used to if I was going to shoot this rifle more, or if I was owning this rifle. One other thing that I noticed immediately about the Scar was the controls. When you are reloading this gun, or when you are running the safety at the range, you have very AR-15-like controls. And you have your mag release over on the other side, and it is similar to an AR-15, and I really dig that because the overall shooting experience on the rifle when it comes to reloads doesn't really change much. I mean, when I was doing reloads at the range, and I was dropping mags, when I was getting my safety on or off, it felt about like an AR-15, so controls were awesome. I have no complaints there. The only thing I will say when it comes to doing reloads at the range, you do have, of course, because it is a Scar, this is kind of a common thing with the Scar, you have a more restrictive mag well. You have to be a little bit more conscious about reloading mags, and of course, you want to be careful about what mags you're using. I was using very old OK Industries and Colt GI mags primarily, and those all worked perfectly in this rifle because it's kind of spec for GI aluminum mags, and that's just the way that it is. But I was also using some Gen 3 PMags, and of course those worked well. Gen 2 PMags, those kind of will work, but they are very tight. So I don't know that I would recommend using those, kind of just a pain in the butt. But the GI mags work great, and they are just, you know, really easy to get in there, but you got to be careful because, again, it's easy to not get it lined up properly and get the mag jammed up a little bit. So when it comes to reload, it's just something that you got to just get used to. Now, the safety on this, again, is AR-15-like. The placement of the safety, you have no issues with it digging into your trigger finger on the other side, and it's also really easy to get on and off. I dig that quite a bit. That was something I immediately noticed, and just dry firing at the house and then also at the range was that safety being pretty freaking awesome. Although this does have a more funky extended looking barrel, it is just 16 inches and it is a very, very good barrel. FN, as many people know, makes incredible barrels. This is chrome lined and cold hammer forged. It's a 16-inch barrel with a 1-in-7 twist. A lot of folks get these barrels chopped down. I think this thing is just dying to have a short barrel on this. I don't know that the 16-inch barrel is bad, and they are very accurate rifles, so having that extra barrel length again, may not necessarily be a bad thing, and they do have other rail options out there that might give you a little bit more space. You do have a very thin profile. It's a very skinny pencil barrel up here in the front, and I know that people haven't really complained about this before, so I don't know. I don't have enough rounds down range on this rifle to really tell you one way or another, but I would be very curious to see how this barrel does as it heats up and all that good stuff. But being cold hammer forged and chrome lined, I'm sure it is just fine, and they have tested this rifle quite a bit at this point. You do have a flip-up front sight that is attached to the front sight gas block combo that's up here. And then you also have your gas settings. Here in the 12 o'clock position, that's just going to be the standard setting that is going to stay in. And then you also do have a suppressed setting if you crank it to the right slightly or to the left, depending on which way you're looking at the sight. And those are the two gas settings that the rifle has. The rear sight is great. I have absolutely no issues or complaints with the sights on the Scar. I think they are very, very good, and I, once again, have no complaints there at all. The Geisley Trigger, this thing is phenomenal. You can shoot this rifle pretty freaking fast with this trigger. As far as the weight on the trigger, I would say you are probably right around 3 pounds, but you got real nice two-stage take up there. You're gonna hit a really nice crisp wall. It's gonna break. Again, it feels to me about like 3 pounds, and you got your reset right there. And it is just a phenomenal trigger. I do think if you are gonna go with the Scar, that would definitely be the trigger upgrade you would want to go with. The trigger out of box is not the best. The factory stock at the range, it wasn't bad. I didn't have a major issue with how the cheek weld was or anything like that, or the length of pull. The only issue that I had is with this freaking recoil pad in the back. The recoil pad is comfortable here, but I cannot stand rubber recoil pads that angle up like that on the top and the bottom. When it's in your shoulder, that's great, but if you're going down to a low ready or up or whatever, this thing grabs clothing like crazy, and that's really annoying to me, so I would ditch this stock just for this reason in the back here. I can't stand it when I go to bring the rifle up and it catches a hoodie, and then I got to do this weird thing where I just press it all the way out and then bring it back up. I just don't really like that much, so I would ditch this and go with something else. I am not a fan of FN as a company, quite frankly. They give me pretty hardcore PTR vibes, if you guys remember those videos, in the way of voiding the warranty if you run it suppressed. I'm not going to harp on that too much because everyone does nowadays. We all get it. If you run the gun suppressed, it voids the warranty. I think that's pretty crappy, and it's not great coming from a $3,000 rifle, and that's kind of unacceptable to me, especially if you have a suppressor setting. You guys know how I feel about that because PTR was the same way about my 9CT with it being threaded in Trilug. That, to me, shows a company that really doesn't care a lot about their user market, the consumer market. Now, I do think that for the price point of this rifle being like $3,100, $3,400, I think it is a little bit inflated. I think it could come down, and if it did come down, I'd be a lot more interested in the rifle. And by come down, I'm not trying to say that I think this rifle should be $1,000, but I think at like $2,200, $2,300, it would be a lot more reasonable. $3,100 to $3,400, I just can't see it, guys. I'm sorry. My SP5 was like $3,100 if you look around online. It is what it is. It's very hypocritical that I bought that, but I wouldn't buy this at $3,100. But it's just, I don't know. Now, the 7.62 variation, I do see a lot of use to, because there's not that many good, accurate, reliable 7.62 battle rifles out there. You know, we're looking at a handful of battle rifles out there that I would say you could bet your life on. And with 5.56, it's like unlimited, the amount of options. And that would be the only reason why, if I was going to spend the money on a Scar, I'd be a lot more apt to do it on a 17. I think the 16 is very cool. It's an awesome rifle. It's reliable. It's accurate. But for $3,100, I could get a lot more very cool, reliable, accurate AR-15s. 2 to 3 times the number of them. I do think the overall rifle is really nice. I know a lot of people hate on the Scar. I didn't really see anything that I could hate on of the actual rifle itself at the range. It's shot incredibly well. Now, when it comes to the non-reciprocating variation that this one is, I think that is phenomenal. That's a great choice. They should have went with that from the start. And by this being non-reciprocating, I didn't have any issues at all with my hand placement there. I think it's just fine. If they gave you, they kind of have the same deal that the Bren has going on with the short, skimpy little rail up here. I would much rather see this rail just continued out. That would be awesome. Have it very similar to the 20S and just have a full-length rail. I'm sure that would increase the price point like a freaking $1,000, but having a full-length rail would be incredible because it changes the look of the rifle, and it also gives you a lot more capability. You don't have to have all your stuff sandwiched in this small section right here on the back. If you guys have any other questions about this rifle or anything else on the channel, please throw them down below in the comment section, and I absolutely will get back to you. While you're down there, head up to that description, check out the links to support the channel, and as always, stay tuned for more great videos coming soon.